she said, "Do you see them? Do you see those shadows? Like, look over there. Do you see that?" And I was looking all around. I was standing there and I was horrified. So I'm going to get into the story. This is many events I'm going to go over, all true stories. By the way, thanks for being here. If you're new, I'm Dr. Andrew O'Connor. If you like this kind of content right now, give the video a like and then subscribe. It helps share the video to everyone. And that way you don't lose my channel when you hit subscribe. And if you want more behind the scenes or personal information, head over to my other channel, Doc in the Den. I'll put the description in the box. And then our new medical channel where my friend and I are trying to put out free medical content to help bring back trust to healthcare because trust is lost. Well, let's get into this. This is the most magical, haunting, and wild summer I ever had. It's 1977. I'm just a kid. And back then, before my family had lost everything and we didn't have anything, we used to be wealthy when I was a kid, and we were staying in Sun Valley, Idaho. It's a really well-known resort town at that time, and I think still now to this day, even though I haven't been back in years. But for the wealthy and the well-known. But it was also a sad time for me as a child. I was 9 years old, and we had this really large summer house there. And as a kid, I didn't realize how fortunate I was until we lost everything, but that's a different story. And we had this really large summer house, but I was the youngest of all my siblings. And at the time, there was how many kids were in the family? 6 of us total at that time. Things changed after that, but 6 of us at that time. I was the youngest. And so everybody went off and did their thing, and I was always left alone. And some of my family stayed back in Chicago, so it's just me here in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I was laying on the ground, I remember one morning, in this big, huge house. And there was a little, we weren't allowed to watch TV. Like, I think I was allowed to have like an hour a day, but little black and white TV in this huge house, and I'm watching it, and over the news said Elvis Presley just died. And I knew who Elvis was. Of course, I didn't know everything about him, but it said he had just died. The circumstances were just coming out. We didn't know all the details, and I was laying there thinking, oh, that's just really sad. And I just remember being so lonely at that time and bored in the house. And so my stepmom said, you need to just get out. So I had a 10-speed bike, and, I'm Gen X. Like, they let us leave the house and be gone all day until nighttime. And honestly, nobody asked where I was. And it was just a lonely time. But so I would ride into the village in Sun Valley, and I would just hang out different places, and I met this other girl. And so we kind of became friends, as much friends you could be when you're there for the summer. And we're riding bikes around, just looking around, and we're like, hey, let's go check out the Sun Valley Lodge. Now, this is a really famous lodge that was built, in the 1930s, really large, huge, ominous. And we're just poking around because at 9 years old, especially in the 70s, you could get away with getting in to kind of anywhere. You really could. You kind of went unnoticed. It was kind of great. So we snuck into this part of the lodge, and I want to say it was the ballroom as I'm looking back on it now. Back then, I didn't really know what room that was. And I think we entered through an open door. I'm trying to remember. And we're just in this huge room. Maybe it was an event room, probably an event room. And because they had this really well-known ice rink out front where you could go ice skating, and really famous people stayed there. So I'm sure there was just really great events. And before I get to the scary part, I even remember my parents would say, they would come back with autographed pictures for me and say, oh, we just had dinner with the Bionic Woman. Well, as a 9-year-old in 1977, I was like, oh my gosh, what? Now, I wasn't allowed to come to dinner, but I did get the autographed photograph of Lindsay Wagner, Bionic Woman at that time. That was amazing for me. And then they had Peggy Fleming. Those of you don't know, she was a really famous ice skater at the time. She came over and ate at our house. Again, it was a very different time for us. And then the time I saw the most famous person. Well, actually, I saw 2 famous persons. I'll tell you that in a second. But so here we are in this very large lodge, and we go into this event room, and it's very dark. There's no lights on. There's no one in there. And we're just kind of joking around. And then my friend says to me, because we were in there for quite a while and we were just laughing and poking around. She's like, "Oh my God, do you see those shadows? Do you see those over there?" And I was like, horrified. I'm standing there. I'm like, what is she looking at? Like, it was very dark and shadowy, and the sun was dappling in. And you know how you see like kind of the little dust crystals in the sun? Like, it was a very creepy place closed down because it was all wood and there was no one around. And I mean, I wanted her like me. I wanted to be my friend. So I was like, yeah, I see them. I didn't see them, but she was freaking me out because she kept saying, "Oh my God, what is moving over there? What is that shadow?" And again, at 9 years old, I didn't know what shadow people were. I didn't know about, I'd heard of ghosts. I knew about that, but I didn't know about shadow people. But I didn't see anything, but I wanted to go along with it. But then she was like, "Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Do you hear that little bell?" And I was standing there quietly. And then I kid you not, I did hear like what sounded like tinkling music on a piano. I did hear that. Now, I don't know if that's in my child's imagination and now I'm believing it like I did, but I told her, yeah, I hear that. And it was so creepy. I just wanted to get out of there. And then we left shortly after. And then I ran into someone really famous, I'll tell you that. But I did some research on the Sun Valley Lodge. And apparently it's not known to be haunted. There's no paranormal stories. And looking back on it, I think it was a mixture of being just this magical childhood when I was out alone on my own all day on my bike. I mean, the world was my pearl. I could go anywhere. What an adventurous time, and how lucky Gen X and the generations before us were to just be able to go adventuring. And that's why I love that book, Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. If you've never read that book and you want to be transported back into a magical summer of our youth, you've got to read that book this summer. But this was my magical summer. So I remember we left there, went riding around the other day, whatever. The next day, or soon after, they had this like Sun Valley Club where we were club members. I know this sounds so bougie, but like we were wealthy at a time before our family lost everything because there was a huge real estate slump in the 80s and we literally lost everything. So, but while we were wealthy, it was really fun. So anyway, we're in this club. It's a swimming club. I had just gone swimming. I'm in the locker room, just combing my hair. I look over in the mirror. Who's standing there? Beautiful, as tall, I mean, had to be 6 foot tall, beautiful, athletic build, tan. And I knew exactly who she was. It was Margot Hemingway standing right next to me in the bathroom at the Sun Valley Club. I don't even remember what they called that club. I'm calling it the Sun Valley Club, but it was like a country club. Standing there, just combing her hair. And I was just staring at her like this. Again, gorgeous. And we're in the locker room. So we're all just, getting changed. And there she is in all her glory and gorgeous. And I was just frozen. And she was probably I'm a 9-year-old tiny little scrawny kid. She probably didn't even think a second thought about me. But there I was in the presence of Margot Hemingway, the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in person. And I'm married. I'm a heterosexual. It has nothing to do with that. But the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in person. And at that time, she was in the height of her fame. I didn't know this back then. I absolutely knew who she was. I knew about the Hemingways. But she had starred in the movie Lipstick in 1976. It was now 1977. And apparently, I didn't know this at the time, she had signed this $1 million deal with Fabergé to do the Babe commercial, I guess the cologne. So she was like one of the most famous people at that time. And we all know who her famous grandfather was, Ernest Hemingway, who also wrote the book in the Sun Valley Lodge where I had just been creeped out. He wrote the book For Whom the Bell Tolls. That book came out in 1940. And he had a house there in Ketchum, Idaho, which was just a bike ride away from inner Sun Valley where the club was and where everything was. So here I was basking in the glory of this huge star. And of course, now we all know about her tragic death. I believe she died of an overdose in Los Angeles. I believe it was phenobarbital, a very tragic ending to this gorgeous woman. And at the height, right? The height of her fame, I believe, was in the 1970s. And so, and interesting too about Ernest Hemingway, because I know he had a place in Key West, Florida, which I'm dying to go to. I've never been to Key West. Have you been to Key West? I am dying to go. But yeah, he had a place there, and people still say, like, at his old home or where he would hang out in Key West, they can still hear a typewriter going, like he still haunts the place. But I tell you what, he died in Ketchum, Idaho. He was in the Sun Valley area. And again, another tragic death, right? Because he ended his own life there, right? He died in his home in 1961 in Ketchum, Idaho. But again, wrote that famous book in the Sun Valley Lodge where I was. So I'm riding my bike home one day, and there was this huge golf course on the way back to our beautiful home where we had caretakers during the winter. And I remember they had this old Volkswagen bus, and I would always go inside and play in it because it had that old Volkswagen that had the little kitchen in it. Do you remember? And as a 9-year-old, it was like having this huge Barbie camper because I would go in there and play all the time. It was our caretaker's van. And to this day, that is why I bought a camper van, because I thought that was the coolest thing, right? I showed you guys my van on the other video. Anyway, I'm riding my bike home at the end of the day on my little 10-speed. It was a purple Peugeot 10-speed. I can see it now. Along this golf course, and I look over, and there's all this commotion. So I pull over into the trees, and I start walking down the slope like, what's going on? There's all these guys in suits on the golf course. Shut the front door. It was President Gerald Ford playing golf just a few feet from me. Now, I didn't go up and say hi to him because I'm just a little kid and there's security everywhere. But I thought, oh, that's so cool. Like, I saw Margot Hemingway right next to me in the bathroom, and now I'm seeing Gerald Ford. That was a huge deal. And then I was super creeped out at the Sun Valley Lodge. It was such a magical summer. It was one of my most magical summers, but also my loneliest summer because I was always alone, just biking around, but I was having these amazing experiences. And even though I didn't see a shadow person there, I did hear something in that dark, closed off event room. I did hear something. I don't know if it was bells or piano, but I did hear something. And again, I can't say it was really something, but it was very creepy, but such a magical summer. I just thought I would share that. Have you guys ever been to Sun Valley, Idaho? And have you ever had an unusual summer like that? That was a great summer from childhood. I didn't know back then how great it was, but now as an adult, I think it's kind of fun to share and hope you're having a happy summer and making it magical as well. Okay, guys, see you on the next one.